I wanted to make a couple of comments. One for the Q&A. We are just using Zoom, so please put your questions in the chat box, and we're just going to let them go in the chat box. And then we're going to alternate between Dennis Michael and Petya to ask the questions. And we'll do the best we can to cover as many questions as possible. So we just want to remind you all that making you all happy and serving your purpose is our priority. And in that effort, we just launched, as I hope all of you know, relaunched the new newsletter called the Global Peregrine. And a big shout out to the team who made that happen. I think it was a great first edition. I've gotten some really positive feedback, and we welcome and encourage you to send us constructive feedback. What did you like about the newsletter? If you have any comments to make it better, please do so. We really do welcome that feedback. We are also working on our overall programming, and so the same thing. You do our SDWAC at SDWAC.org. Give us your feedback. How are we doing program-wise? What kinds of speakers do you like? What do you not like? What have we not done that you'd like us to do? And I also want to have a big shout out to Dave Edict and Stan Katz on our board, but also our really wonderful volunteers, Karan, Jared, Josie, and Mary, who were very, very supportive of the Academic World Quest. It was a tough transition this year because normally it's in person. This was only a Zoom, and it was a little bit difficult because the schools aren't working to get the schools really to be committed to this. So in this case, this year, we only had one school, the Canyon Crest Academy. They had 3 teams, and I sat in on Saturday, I believe it was, for the whole event, and the teams were really awesome, and we're so proud of them. And they will be proceeding next month to the national competition. So we wish them a lot of luck. We'll follow those stories. There are more, and please read our upcoming newsletter where there will be some interesting details about the action behind the scenes. Also, we want to encourage you to renew your memberships and encourage your friends and families to do the same. We realize that this extended Zoom world is not necessarily what we want, but we are still trying very hard to serve our purpose of bringing great speakers and important topics to you. And sort of as an FYI, I was on a Zoom today that included Ambassador Ryan Crocker. Many of you attended our fundraising dinner a year ago when he was our keynote speaker. And it was powerful to hear him say, unprompted, talking to an international audience, for him to call out the World Affairs Councils in the United States. And he said, I really want to let everybody know that the World Affairs Councils serve a critical role in helping share information between US government and foreign policy and the people of the United States, citizens, in the United States. And so it was just a really important reminder that this is not just an educational opportunity. It's not just some fun thing that we do to stay connected, even though it is, but also that we serve a really critical role in ensuring that the citizens, in this case of San Diego County, are well informed about what's going on in Washington, and that we have the opportunity to support both sides of that conversation. If our members want information or they want to be more active and get that voice to Washington, we can play that role. And we also play that role of bringing the information to the people here and promoting that dialogue. So again, that's really what our purpose is. And let us know if there are other things we can do to do that better. We have a quick slide here for our house rules. Basically, I think it's pretty much common sense. Most of us are Zoom queens and kings at this point. It's just being, sensitive to the fact that we're on screen. And I guess I just want to say, having listened to Ambassador Crocker, how appreciative and grateful I am to be part of SDWAC and again, sort of behind the scenes that maybe most of the members are not so aware of, we have a really important and wonderful and highly talented team that is really stepping up to the plate. Dennis Michael, who will do the next introduction, is the chair of our PR, Communication and Marketing Committee. He's doing an incredible job, and he has attracted and he's retaining a really great team behind him. And we have Davide, who's part of that team and also kind of my right hand right now for trying to help really stay focused on getting this newsletter back out. And so there's a big shout out to him. And then again, like I said, the Academic World Quest, the program committee, and all the other subgroups that are helping us continue to thrive during this, the pandemic time. They all really deserve a lot of credit. So I think at this moment, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Dennis Michael. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, Christine, and thanks for the shout out to our newly formed PR marketing and outreach team. It is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker tonight for our Distinguished Speaker Series. I am Dennis Michael Broussard. I am one of the new board members for San Diego World Affairs Council, and I'm pleased to be a part of this event. And I'm pleased to have Audie as our speaker tonight. I also want to give a quick shout out to Filipino Press, who is our media sponsor for this evening. So thanks to Susan de los Santos for helping to promote the event. So without further ado, my intro to Audie. Audie de Castro is the Honorary Consul of the Republic of the Philippines, the first ever to be appointed in San Diego County. His position is a volunteer position, but he is responsible for all of San Diego County, where over 200,000 Filipino-Americans reside. In addition to promoting diplomacy, trade, and tourism, his responsibilities include providing consular services and protections to Filipino citizens. Professionally, Audie is a corporate lawyer and founded De Castro PC, a law firm in downtown San Diego. He received his law degree from the University of San Francisco School of Law. He is a former CPA, certified public accountant, with a business degree from the University of San Diego. Audie has served in various leadership roles within the San Diego community. He served on the board of governors for the San Diego Foundation. He has received numerous board appointments from the San Diego Mayor and City Council, and is past president of the Asian Business Association and the Filipino-American Lawyers of San Diego. A native of San Diego, Audie enjoys spending time with his wife and his 2 teenage sons. He also enjoys cooking and exercise. So please, everybody, welcome Audie de Castro.
Thank you, Dennis Michael. Let me first start by thanking President Christine Scheckler and the board of directors for allowing me to be here tonight to speak about my country, the Philippines, which I'm very proud of. I'd like to specifically thank Dennis Michael, who invited me to speak today. And it just so happens that Dennis Michael is one of my valued advisors on for the Philippine Consulate here in San Diego. I trust him very much. So I want to thank you for all the work that you've done, Dennis Michael. As you mentioned, I am a native of San Diego, so I was actually born here. My family immigrated here about 2 months before I was born. My mom immigrated here by herself with 4 children and pregnant with me. And my dad arrived one day before I was born. But I had the opportunity to be raised as a Filipino in Filipino culture. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I actually was able to visit the Philippines. I will say that on the same lines of what Christine was speaking about, it's really important that the kind of work that the World Affairs Council does, because if it wasn't for organizations like yours, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn about my own country and other countries. And I'm so honored that I was able to do that and now represent the country that my family is from. So I just want to start by thanking you for this opportunity. Let me also acknowledge my colleague from Los Angeles, Trade Commissioner of the Philippines, Eric Elnar, is here. He promised me he'd drop by, and here he is. So I've worked very closely with the Trade Commissioner. He knows a lot more than I do about trade, but I'm happy to give an overview about the Philippines. If I say anything wrong, there might be a little conversation between us tomorrow, but that's it. I'm just kidding. No, I really thank him for all his work. And I also want to thank my colleagues at the at the Department of Tourism, Rich Jimenez, who may be dropping by, but I'm not sure if he's here. So let me start by sharing a slide. I want to start with, okay, so let's see if I get this right. Aha, here we go. And this is one of the things I don't like about Zoom. I'm a little old school, so I like to be in person. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the Philippines just from a 35,000 square foot. The country's located in Southeast Asia. It has 7,641 islands. That's a lot of islands, right? We beat the United States, right? We have 3 main island groups: Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Our neighbors include Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, China, Japan, South Korea, just to name a few. We're in that vicinity of a lot of ASEAN countries, Southeast Asian nations. So it's a great destination to visit and to do business with because of the geographical location. If you go there, you can easily fly to another country, just like you're flying from San Diego to Portland. It's very close. People think we're a small country. Physically, yes, we're the size of Arizona, just to compare. But we have 113 million people living on the islands. So imagine that. We're 1/3 the size of the United States in the state of Arizona, if you put it into context. We're a multilingual country. Primary language there is Tagalog or Filipino, depending on who you ask, but we're a very highly educated country, and we speak English, or we're educated in English, I should say. But there's also over 100 dialects. In fact, they're probably closer to 200. I just said over 100, just in case I don't want to get the wrong number. Now, I think it's important to put this into context about my presentation today. I was asked to talk about Philippine trade and tourism, and we cannot ignore the fact of the pandemic, which changed a lot of worlds, right? I don't need to get into that. We all know what I'm talking about. So what I thought I'd do is talk a little bit first about pre-pandemic, where we stood as a country, at least economically. We were one of the fastest growing ASEAN economies. Those are the members of the ASEAN Association of Southeast Asian Nations. We were second fastest, sometimes third, depending on which year, but we're right up there, right behind China and neck to neck with Vietnam. And one of the reasons why we were so successful is we have a highly educated population, over 750,000 graduates, a large number of them in engineering and technology. We have a very cost competitive skilled labor. In other words, our labor is just a lot less expensive than it is in the United States, but comparable in skills. 72% of the population speaks English. So if a country such as the United States is an English-speaking country and wants to do business, it's a lot easier to come to the Philippines because we speak the language. We're also, as I mentioned earlier, multi-skilled. We are known to be friendly and hospitable, culturally speaking. So whether it's perception always helps your economy if it's a positive one. And also culturally, I would say we have a lot of loyalty. So there's a low attrition and turnover rate, and that brings value to the labor pool. So when you're an outside investor, you go into a country with these types of attitudes, skill set, language skills, lower pay, you can really do well. Let me talk a little bit about Philippines, United States. the United States is the #1 export market for the Philippines. We sell more to the US than any other country, in other words. And US is the Philippines is the 4th import source. So we buy a lot from the United States. It's the #3 trading partner overall. And trading has increased steadily between 2015 and 2019. And that's due to the efforts of people like Trade Commissioner Eric Elnar and his colleagues who have gone about the country promoting the Philippines as a good place to invest. Just want to give you an idea of what we buy from the United States. I won't name them all, but you can see wheat, milk and cream and powder, potatoes, whey and grapes, those kinds of things, just in case you're curious. Of course, this is what we sell to the United States. We're an island, right? Pineapples, juice, pineapple juice, coconuts, crab, cane sugar, tuna, skipjack, and bonito. By the way, our bakeries are excellent too. If you want to try our bakery, I'm going to do a little promotion here. We have places like Goldilocks, Red Ribbon. If you go to National City, Mira Mesa, Chula Vista, and some of the local bakeries, I find them to be one of the best I've ever had. So that's my little shout out for some of my countrymen that are bakers. Now, here's a little bit more information about trade. In 2019, trade was 21 billion between the two countries. Because of COVID, it went down about 10%. And as you can see, it hurt both countries. Philippine exports went down from 12.8 billion, almost 13 billion, to 11.1 billion, meaning we were selling less. And similarly, we were buying less from the United States by almost $1 billion. That's what happens when you have a pandemic. Now, pre-pandemic, we had a very active Department of Tourism that was promoting visitation to the country. And this slide shows the kind of promotions that the DOT had in the United States. This is actually the United States. You can see at the Staples Center, it looks like a Clipper game. We had Filipino Heritage Night, and up on the screen you had the Department of Tourism. And if you drive down Hollywood and Los Angeles, you can see advertising signs. You can see them on the bus. So those kinds of things brought people to the Philippines. Again, here's more advertisement about the Philippines. You can see it's a geographically beautiful country. We're very proud of the nature there and the weather. It's a tropical island that you would enjoy. I brought my son there for the first time. He's 17 now. I brought him there when he was just turned or was right about to become 16. And I was really concerned that how he would react to the change of environment. Because he grew up here in the United States and grew up a lot differently than I did. Because even though I was born here, I grew up in a more Filipino culture. And he absolutely loved it. We took him on a hiking trip with a tribe, a real tribe that took us around and showed us how they hunt. And then he went surfing, and then he got to experience the city life. But he also got to meet a lot of the locals there, which I'd like to talk about very briefly in the right time. But first, let me finish about what the Department of Tourism has been doing. Their work has resulted in the Philippines getting a lot of accolades. It received a lot of awards. For example, Palawan, one of our most popular islands, if not the most popular, was voted the best island in the world by the magazines, by Travel and Leisure. And that was actually one of the islands that I've been to. And then it got a lot of awards. It was Asia's leading dive destination. If anybody here likes to scuba dive, the waters are crystal clear, and I'm not exaggerating. If you go to the beach in Palawan, as an example, you can look right at the shore and you'll see a bunch of fish swimming. It is that clear. And I even asked my son, should I bring my wetsuit? And he says, Dad, no way. You're not going to embarrass me. Because the water is literally 80 something degrees. It's beautiful there. So it's got Asia's leading destination. It's got a leading tourist board. And then it's got the tourist attraction Intramuros in Manila, which you should visit if you haven't. Very historical place. So this is the time, this blank screen, I wanted to show, since I'm talking about the beauty of the country, I want to at least show a couple of videos, and I hope this works. I'm getting a little worried here, but let's give it a shot. Okay, so here, the first video I'd like to show you is a brief video about city life by a visitor, okay? So you get an idea of what it's like. And this was created by the Department of Tourism. Okay, let me just try to do you see the video?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get my cursor over, and I'm not sure why my cursor is not going over there. Okay, did I switch something? Okay. Huh. Forgive me, how do I get my cursor over there? I'm so sorry, everybody. Let me start over here. Huh. Well, I can't get it over, so I'm sorry. I really wanted to show the video. Something's wrong. But let me go back to my presentation, I guess. So where did I end up here? Okay, so here's the impact of the pandemic. Our growth rate decreased substantially, unfortunately. We were riding high up to about 2019. We went down 9.5% in 2020. Trade decreased substantially, decreased at an annual rate of 11% as of actually January 2021. So these are pretty recent numbers. Export sales decreased at an annual rate of 5.2%, and tourism has declined, one of our big moneymakers for the economy. Just to give you an example, like look at how well we were doing from 16 to 19. From 16 to 17, it's almost growing 10% a year. If you look at the numbers, we started off at 6 million in 2016 in round numbers. We go up to 6.6, then 7.2, all the way to 8.2, an extra million people in 2019. But look at 2020, drastic change to 1.5 million visitors. That could really hurt a local economy. And this is the part where I want to talk to you about the people. Because tourism, the reason why we have promoted tourism so much is not only because we have something to sell, but it brings a lot of revenue to the local economy, the small businesses. And what you may or may not know about the Philippines is that the Philippines has a high rate of poverty, unfortunately. And tourism brings revenues to those local economies. And I'm sad to say that when I go there, I often do have mixed feelings because on the one hand, there's so much beauty in the country, which I was hoping to show you in these videos, incredible beauty. But there are parts of the Philippines that are occupied by impoverished families. So I have to be very honest. There are people that are living very poorly that it almost will shock you, to be honest. And I just can't lie about that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so inspired to have taken this position, because when I promote the country, I keep reminding myself, why am I doing this? I'm promoting it not just because it's a beautiful country and I'm proud of my heritage, but I'm hoping that it will help the impoverished families in the long run. So what I try to do is, when I bring people to the Philippines, and annually we have what's called the Ambassador Tour, which I'm in charge of San Diego to bring people. And I think in 2019, the last time I was there, which was pre-COVID, we brought 50 San Diegans there. We we were able to visit the villages, and I introduced my son to a lot of these people and got to meet them. And it was very, not just, I'd say inspiring, but it really was educational. These people are so kind, despite the fact that they live in a very difficult situation. So I would be remiss in not mentioning, um, that there are people in the country that really need financial assistance. Um, I would be remiss in talking about how great the tourism is in promoting business. But from my standpoint, that's why I do the work. Okay. So, um, of course, the government has taken measures to reopen the economy. Now, one of the hurdles we have is we don't have as much money as countries like the United States or Canada. But we've done some things. There were loans to small businesses and calamity funds in 2020. Not at the scale the United States has done, but the government has done what it could, given its finances. It's shifted its manufacturing and emphasized production of personal protective equipment and masks, which I thought was a very smart move. In fact, we started producing so much that we were able to provide some to other countries. Of course, we have needs too. We need vaccines, which is probably, I think, one of the most, if not the most important thing. But at least we're able to provide some things to other countries. We have, we've opened up for essential services, just like the United States. There were severe lockdowns, but we've eased those restrictions, but there's still some in place. There's a curfew between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. Restaurants open at 50% capacity, as other stores. And you are required to wear, at least in Metro Manila, face masks and shields, not just face masks, but you have to have the plastic shield as well. Domestic travel was reopened, meaning if you're in Cebu, you can go to Palawan. Okay, so you can travel domestically. And COVID vaccines commenced in March 2021. So we had a lot of difficulty like other countries in 2020, but I think we are on the right path, and we're hoping that we would have enough vaccines to for the majority of the population by 2021. Now, I want to talk about this domestic travel permitted because, it was one of the things that we've done to kind of promote the economy locally, okay? And as a result of the implementations, in response to COVID, Philippines was put on the World Travel and Tourism Council and given the Safe Travel stamp for health and hygiene protocols. So it's on the right track, despite being economically challenged in that regard. And then it re-engaged its promotion, its tourism promotion and campaign. Internally, as you can see here, they have this campaign called Wake Up in the Philippines campaign, where they're promoting domestic travel. And I wanted to show this new app that the Department of Tourism has put out. And the app is designed to assist people in domestic travel. It's actually a pretty nice app. So let me try sharing that right now. So I'll give this a shot, but if it doesn't work, I hope I don't, let Let me see what I'm doing here. Oh, okay. You know what I'm gonna do? I think the opportunity is here for me to show that video. Can I do it now? Okay. I'm a little out of order, but here it is. I just woke up from the side of my mind. Okay, was everybody able to see that, right? Okay, that was Metro Manila. That's the city. Did you see that big skyline? That's what that looked like Makati to me. Okay, so that's what it's like in the city. Now let me show you what it's like at the beaches. Now, wasn't that beautiful? Okay, see, so when I look at those videos, I just want to go back to the Philippines. But let me show you what I was gonna, I'm still sharing my screen, right? Can you still see it? Okay, so this is the app that I was talking about that the Department of Tourism created, which helps people who are traveling with the latest information.
Audie, we're still, sorry, this is Betty. We're still seeing the video. We don't see.
Oh, you are? Okay, let me try this differently. Okay. Thank you for telling me. Okay, here we go. You got, did I get that? Okay, I'm getting good, right? So this is the travel app that the Department of Tourism created to help promote domestic tourism, but it could work for anybody who's going into the country. So as you can see at the bottom of the screen, these are the islands that have reopened for domestic destinations. And if you click on them, on each one, it will tell you information about what's going on in that particular island. This is Palawan. This is my, at least I think it's my favorite island so far. And it tells you, well, it tells you about introductions about it. It gives you the travel advisory, you know, protocols, what's needed there. I hope you can see it. Community quarantines. It tells you places to stay. So at the same time, it's helping to promote the local hotels. And here's another location within Palawan called El Nido, which is a very popular tourist destination. So I think this is a great app, and it's part of the effort for the Department of Tourism to try to find a way out of this pandemic. And the truth is that at the moment, it's very difficult to go to the Philippines. We're promoting domestic tourism, but if you are planning to, but you can go there, of course, if you're a Filipino citizen or married to one, or if you're planning to do business there, we can probably find a way, but you have to make an application and describe your purposes. But you know, we work our little channels within the government if there's a business opportunity. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So I don't know if I'm still sharing the screen. Am I still sharing the screen? Okay.
No, not at the moment.
Okay, so let me go back to my, now I'm sharing it, right? Okay, so that was the app. Okay, let me go from the beginning here. Well, I guess I'm not, let me find where I'm at here first. Oh, actually, I'm actually at the end. So, I mean, yeah, I'm at the end here. I mean, basically, this is the last screen. It says, thank you, maraming salamat po, which is thank you in Tagalog. But so that's pretty much a general snapshot. I had to kind of stray a little bit from the program because of the technical issues. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, first of all, thank you for your presentation. I think many of us are ready to sign up and go. I am anyway, to go scuba diving. The water and the beaches is my thing, so that looks gorgeous. Just a reminder to everybody, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box, please. I'll lead off with a question, and again, I'm more into the politics of things. So
okay, well, I this is where I gotta go now. I'll see you. Okay.
So what is the current situation in the Philippines vis-a-vis some of the terrorist groups that have made the news in the past?
Mm-hmm.
Are they still active? Where are they? How does that impact traveling? But the question really is more to the degree that you can give us some kind of a sense of
Sure.
the politics of Philippines today.
Okay. There is still terrorism there. It is located in the southernmost part of Mindanao, which, if you recall the map that I showed you, it was the island in the most south, and it's right at the very tip. Now, it is very dangerous to go there. I would strongly advise you to not go that far south. But that being said, they are pretty much confined to that area. People have traveled. In fact, we brought a group from the United States 3 years ago to Mindanao during the height of the terrorism, but we brought them to Davao, where the president is from. And they have reported to me that it was probably the most safest experience that experienced within the Philippines, because they had security everywhere and so forth. But I have been to the Philippines many times, and I have never felt threatened. I think the short answer to your question is it still exists there, but just stay out of the southernmost part of Mindanao. I think you're on mute.
I was checking to see if we had any other written questions yet.
Okay.
So same thing. Could you give maybe some kind of an overview of the current international relationships between the Philippines and China, Philippines and Russia, and the Philippines and, let's say, the US government, and the Philippines and the EU?
Well, it's really complicated, right? So, we have a president that has operated very differently from past presidents. But the reality is that based on all polls, he has over 90% approval rating. So he's kind of been empowered to do a lot to promote his agenda. And he's taken a different stance with China from what I know. I'm not an expert in the area, but I just follow what I'm able to. And under the former administration that I worked for under President Aquino, we had a little more adversarial relationship, I guess you could say, with China, and we sued them in arbitration and won, right? Now, there were some concerns because when President Duterte took over that we weren't strong on China's position with I guess the West Philippine Sea, they call it the South China Sea. But I think their relationship is better than it was prior with Aquino. And that's controversial. Some people do not agree with that and other people do. It's sort of similar to when Trump was president, people didn't agree with his relationship with Putin. And we have a similar situation with Putin as well, because the president Duterte visited Putin with the Department of Foreign Affairs Secretary in, I believe in 2017 or 18, and which is highly publicized. So I think they have a decent relationship. So they have diplomatic relations. The president hasn't visited the United States. So based on that, it's fair to surmise that he at least has some diplomatic relations with Putin versus at least at the moment with Biden, but Biden's just too new. So I don't have any comments on the other countries that you mentioned. I mean, those are kind of the main ones: China, Russia, and the United States. But United States has always been historically our biggest ally. Now that has deteriorated in recent years, but the reality is that we're so intertwined with the United States, and just as my opinion, that I think that relationship is always going to be there. It will always be there. And it kind of depends too on how the results of the election in 2022, who wins, on the direction it will go, whether it improves or worsens. But I just think there's too much at stake for that relationship to not continue. We have too much trading with each other strategically. The United States, frankly, needs the Philippines in some ways, because otherwise, if we don't have that relationship, there could be another country like that, China, that will control that area, control trading, the seas, and so forth. So I just think there's just too much at stake.
Audie, we have a couple of questions in the chat,
sure.
And I'll ask you one from Bob Ning. And his question is, when will you be taking the next group from San Diego to sightsee in the Philippines?
Okay, well, yeah, I'm hoping to do that next year. I was hoping last year it'll be this year, but I'm really positive and think it's going to happen next year. There's also a possibility that I might do a trade mission later this year, but that all depends on the pandemic. Because I can put together a mission in a matter of a few months, because I just make my calls and I can have government waiting for us over there and organizing things for us over there. But realistically, I think it's got to be in 2022. Thank you for that question, because I would love to do it.
There's a question that's not too far removed from kind of the similar topic area. This one's from Gerald Cox, and he's talking about his girlfriend in the Philippines that he's met over there, and that's sweet. He'd like to go out there in June and propose. His question is there any news on reopening the border to visiting tourists by June, or is there a hint? Is there any idea of when the Philippines might be talking about a reopening?
I don't have any hints yet, unfortunately, and that's one of the most common questions. And I'm not saying that to discount it. It's a very legitimate question. It has been an extremely challenging time for me. I'm going to be really level with everybody. I've been the delivery person of a lot of bad news for people who want to go to the Philippines for a lot of very good and valid reasons, including death and illness, just because of the restrictions of going there. Having said that, there is not without hope, because a person can apply, but they have to go through a process and apply for a visa, but it has to get approved in Manila. Like, we make the recommendation at the consulate office, we send it over to the Department of Foreign Affairs in Manila or the relevant agency. So if you're opening a business, we'd send it to Department of Trade and Investment, and they approve, and then it comes back, and it takes a process.
Our next question, thanks for that answer, Audie. Our next question is from Kevin Cruz, and he's got two, but I'll ask one right now. Are there currently any direct flights to the Philippines and or any work with the San Diego International Airport to establish a direct route?
The answer is no, there are currently no direct flights. On the second question, there was work to try to establish a direct flight a few years ago, but it wasn't actually going to be direct in the sense where you fly straight to from San Diego to the Philippines, but they were going to need to make it interconnect with either Las Vegas or I think Vancouver. And the reason why is because, just to be perfectly frank, because I met with Philippine Airlines and the San Diego Airport Authority on this, it's a financial issue. Because there's a lot of people that will drive to Los Angeles. There are buses that take them there, and they make a lot more money flying direct from Los Angeles than building an infrastructure in San Diego and accommodating the San Diegans. At least those are my words. I'm extrapolating from everything that they've told me. Because what they were proposing at the time was having, not like Los Angeles where they have flights every day. I think it's flight 103B from I think at 10 p.m. right? I mean, it's something like that. And then they have another flight, I think early in the morning, but it was going to be like a Tuesday and Thursday deal with limited service. And I think a lot of it had to do with the numbers. If there are more people that say we won't fly from San Diego, they will consider it. But it's always, PAL is a business. And I'm not faulting them for that. They have to make their business decision.
Thanks for that answer. I always, whenever I visit my mother in the Philippines, it's always through Los Angeles, LAX.
Right.
And next question from David. As a busy honorary consul, what issues occupy most of your time? Anything different now due to the pandemic?
Well, yes, I don't go out as often. Like I would normally be giving this kind of presentation in person. But I think, when I say my time, David, and I'm friends with David, so thank you, David. I'm referring also to my entire office. The volume of calls we've gotten during the pandemic it has multiplied. So we're constantly responding to messages. That's what takes up our time right now. And let me also add to that. We're not the only consul office with that problem. And when I say consul, I don't just mean Philippine consul, but I will speak for the Philippine consuls across the United States. What happened during the pandemic was that we were closed by order, of course, of the Philippines, because we actually are deemed essential by the United States State Department, right? But we closed on our own accord for safety reasons. A lot of the consulate offices had a backlog, including the consulate generals. As a result, when we came back, we started off with a backlog and started off with a thinner staffing at the consulate general's office. My office wasn't any less. I just run my law firm, right? But I hire people to do this for the consulate. What happened was that backlog flowed into the honorary consulate offices. So people were calling our office or actually driving all the way down from other cities because they couldn't get the phones answered or the doors opened at the consulate general's offices. So to answer your question, David, we've all been responding to requests that I can't even accommodate sometimes my own relatives when they ask me. And I'm really embarrassed that I can't return their calls as quickly as I would normally. But let me say what I did though. It's a small thing, but I actually hired a couple of employees in the Philippines to provide some employment over there at US wages, by the way, to actually just sit there and answer calls. So it has actually helped facilitate the responses because people, what I know, want to hear a human voice. They don't want to hear a message. And if they hear a message, they're going to call again 5 minutes later, and they're going to keep calling, and it's just not going to go away. So it's been the calls and the emails. It's been really hard.
Thanks for that answer, Audie. We have another question from Kevin, who asked the previous question. His question now kind of jumps on Christine's question. And his question is, what actions do you think the United States could take to improve relations with the Philippines?
Well, I think it depends on who the president is. At the moment, I don't think President Duterte likes any country that's telling him what to do. So I think that's public knowledge, right? So I think that if I were the United States, I would probably approach him very delicately and not try to meddle too much into the country's own politics and let them figure that out. Because I think that's what seems to have angered him the most, when other countries have been a little presumptuous from his standpoint when they approach him. And there's some validity to that, because we've been colonized by, just to bring a little history to this, there have been countries that have ruled us before, right? China, Spain, United States, even in some parts Japan. And I think some Filipinos are tired of that. And on a human level, I can see that.
It's on mute. Thanks for that answer, Audie. Follow-up comment with a question from Gerald Cox. Thank you for your time, he says. And are you willing to share your email address for future discussions?
Yes. Would you like it? Should I type it in the chat room?
Yeah, put it right in the chat, and people can contact you that way, and a website maybe if anyone wants further information about you or the consulate's office.
Okay. I'll put our phone number. Our website is I don't have it. We're linked with the Los Angeles Consulate General, so you can just Google the Los Angeles Consulate General of the Philippines, and that's where we share the same information, share the same website. Like my information's on there as well.
I've got a question that's mainly for our attendees and our listeners than for myself, because I already know. But when you're talking about the tours that you put together and organized to the Philippines, can you go over a little bit about the itinerary? Because it is a great itinerary that if anyone here was interested in, would probably want to sign up, because there are aspects of diplomacy and political, like international relations involved a little bit.
Yes, there is. It's actually very educational. If you were to go on one of our trips, you would, you'd fly out of Los Angeles from, you'd have to go up there and fly out. You'd arrive there on an early morning because it's 16 hours ahead. So you just got to do the math, right? And when you land, you stay at the best hotels. I'm really impressed with the hotels that we stay at. They're 4- or 5-star hotels, oftentimes in Makati, but depending on which island we go to. And usually, like on the first day, they will take you to museums, or you might even have the opportunity to visit Malacañang Palace, which is where the president resides, or at least most do. So they will take you on a structured tour the first few days. You are allowed to have, not allowed, you don't have to go on the tours actually. And oftentimes I elect not to, because I've done the trip several times already. But they also have days where they will take you to beaches, resorts, to go boating, snorkeling, zip lining. So they create a variety of activities for you. What's included on the trip too is food. There is so much food that almost every meal there at the hotels is a buffet, and the food there is first class. I absolutely love the food there, and they serve all kinds of food. So it's a little bit of a dichotomy, because as I mentioned earlier, there's some parts of the island where you see poverty, but when you go on this tour, you will experience luxury. And we travel in buses, and the buses are escorted, so you won't have to deal with the traffic of the Philippines. Because I will tell you that you can figure out 100 million people in the state of Arizona is going to create traffic, right? So, but on this tour, you will not really have to deal with traffic that frequently because it's escorted by security. You will also be able to meet some key government officials. The ambassador often comes, the secretary, and sometimes you do meet the president. So it's an interesting experience. And also, let me add, Dennis, Michael, if I don't mind, I've also organized some trade missions as well for business executives that want to go and look at opportunities to do business. And there was one that I organized a few years ago, and there were representatives from the city of San Diego. Councilmember Chris Kate went, Mayor Ron Morrison of National City went, and then we had Jason Pagyao, who represented the city of Chula Vista. And then we brought some executives too. And I introduced them to a lot of the American Chamber of Commerce executives, the trade and industry secretaries, and so forth. If you're interested in going there on a tour or even doing business, email me, because I can really connect you if you work with me. I had an executive that wanted to open a clinical a clinic in the Philippines, and he said to me, Audie, I need to get through. Within a week, I had a meeting with the ambassador at the U.S. Embassy, and then in the next month he was meeting at Malacañang Palace with the cabinet to discuss opening his business over there. It involved a lot of money, but that helps. But I think, with the right intentions, we can probably get you in.
I don't see any follow-up questions, but we still have time for more questions if anyone is interested in learning more, whether it's something that Audie has already covered, or maybe a topic that is related to the Philippines that you are thinking of, or something that you read recently. Audie can probably discuss some aspect of that.
Well, I do see a question here from Pecha about Filipino restaurants.
Pecha had a very important question.
Are you talking about here
is,
in San Diego?
Yeah, here in San Diego.
Okay, first of all, I have to say they're all good, because otherwise I'm going to get in trouble, right? Because one thing I can't do is show favoritism. But I would say that if you go to National City or Mira Mesa, you'll find a lot of places that we call them duro style, meaning you point at what you want. In National City, there is a place called Tita's Kitchenette, which I'm sure Elizabeth and Dennis Michael, Romel know, they're all here, Susan De Los Santos, and so forth. They have excellent barbecue. And then there's also Via Manila in National City. They're a sit-down restaurant, locally owned, very family-oriented. And I absolutely love their pork and their fried chicken. Okay, and then across the street, there's Arlitos. And then there's some of the chain franchises too that I've always enjoyed, like Goldilocks. Goldilocks is one of the world's largest family-owned Filipino restaurants. I think they have 400 to 500 restaurants worldwide. But I think they only have one in San Diego now. And then there's Red Ribbon, which is primarily a bakery. I don't know. And Dennis Michael, I don't live in Mira Mesa, but I know there's the Filipino fast food on Mira Mesa Boulevard, and their fried pork lechon kawali is stupendous. So, but I don't want to miss anybody. Did I miss anything? I know there's a few. I knew members of my community here that might know others.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones. If anyone in attendance tonight has not tried Filipino food, it is, to me, probably the most understated of the Asian cuisines. There's a wide variety of flavor of just anything. The spices, and I don't mean like hot, but yeah, there's hot too, but the range of spices, the range of the variety, the kinds of, whether, even if you're vegetarian, it's all really good. I would encourage anyone to give it a try.
Mhm. I think there's a couple more suggestions in the chat box. And also, by the way, you should also try our dessert. There's a ice cream. There's a dessert called halo halo, which is like it's, I don't know how to describe it, but it's a mixture of ice cream, Filipino ice cream, with a lot of various sweet beans and coconut spore. I don't know the English words, but it is so good. And what's the place that J-Rel started? I can't remember the name.
Snoise.
Snoise. There's a place called Snoise. They just opened another location in Claremont, and they have one in Spring Valley. And they're sort of marketing it almost like it looks like a franchise, and it's really refreshing, sweet drinks that I just love. But there's other places that serve that as well.
All right, Audie, we have a couple more questions popping up here,
Sure.
and I think I may have missed one or two, but we'll get to them since we have time. Another one from Kevin. And Kevin, this is not a silly question. This is a legit question. He says, when referring to the Philippines, is it the Philippines or Philippines? I recall Ukraine was similarly incorrect, referred to as the Ukraine when it was in the news in 2014.
Well, you know what? I don't know that I'm the right person to answer this, but I've always said the Philippines, but I never really thought about it. Does anybody know? I mean, I'm not the only Filipino here. I've always just said the Philippines.
As have I.
Okay.
Kelsey, I seem to have missed your travel question.
There's a travel question.
I was scrolling up to catch Kelsey's questions, and I can't seem to locate it. There's some restaurant recommendations by Susan. Hi, Susan. Thanks again for sponsoring, being a media sponsor of the event, Susan, from Filipino Press. Didn't realize you were here.
I had a question too about the Filipino community in San Diego. How active is that community, and what do they do? How often do they do it? What kind of celebration? What do they do to maintain their cultural heritage and linkages?
It's an extreme.
And how large was it again? Several hundred thousand?
About 205,000,
Mm-hmm.
making us, I believe, the second largest ethnic minority in San Diego County behind the Latinos.
Mm-hmm.
It's an extremely active group. We have a number of groups that promote the culture. We have a Filipino school that organizes a lot of programs to teach the culture and organizes trips back to the Philippines and gives them sort of an immersion experience. We have a large arts group, Basakat, that teaches a lot of dancing and culture as well. They're organized professionally as well. And I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody, but there's the Filipino educators. They work closely together to promote, diversity, not just diversity in education, but also the language. There's also the House of Philippines in Balboa Park, which is constructing a new cottage. And its cottage will actually be, in my opinion, the most conspicuous spot among all the countries that have representation over there. So there's a lot of groups. I'm for sure I miss a few, but just to answer your question.
What activity, and it may be Balboa Park, what activity in San Diego, or what 1, 2, 3, whatever, if one wanted to meet the Filipino community here and have a Philippine experience, what would you recommend?
Okay, well, I'd let anybody jump in on this, but I'll start by saying that if you go to Balboa Park and visit the House of Philippines on the days that they're open on the weekends, and they have a lot of activities out there, you'll be able to experience the culture there. They have, like, if you visit their cottage, you'll see a lot of the art and history in there. But sometimes they have activities out there because they partner with other organizations. Sometimes they'll have performances there. We also have in the South Bay a PhilAmFest in Paradise Valley Road in October, because October is Filipino-American History Month. And I think that's one of the largest festivals that our community puts out. And there'll be a lot of booths, performances, food. You'll see a lot of politicians too making their rounds, you know, right before November. And then I know that there's one, Dennis Michael, I think you did one in Mira Mesa for a while, right? Didn't you do a cultural event?
Yeah, in a semi-formal life, I was involved with a lot of the activities that happened in the Filipino community, whether it was something that I was directly producing or in charge of, or something I was volunteering and helping out on. There are a lot of Filipino organizations in San Diego, almost 100 nonprofits that are Filipino-American based alone.
Right. There's a lot of, there used to be, pre-COVID, there were a lot of galas that I would have to go to. Well, I would go to, I'd be happy to go to, but you know, there were quite a few.
And as Susan says, you can find a lot more about what's going on in the Filipino community in the Filipino Press, who again is our media sponsor for the event.
We also have, I'm sorry, we have on June 12th is our Independence Day, and during the month of June, there's a host of Philippine Independence Day events. And I would say one of the more popular ones happens to occur right at the House of Philippines in Balboa Park. But there's also one in Oceanside, which is done by an organization called Filipino-American Culture Organization. And there's another one called Mabuhay Festival in National City at Kimball Park that happens right around that time as well in June. So, you know, it's great because we're a large county, geographically speaking. So there's one in the north, there's one in the south, and one right in the middle.
Question, Kelsey, thank you for reposting your question. Sorry that I missed it previously. Her question is regarding what you were describing as for the trips. Is the travel primarily religious trips, as you mentioned, mission? Other types of travel available strictly sightseeing? And do they also accommodate special meals?
They're not religious. When I said mission, I was referring to a trade mission, like our goal. I'm not sure what you mean by special meals. Do you mean like particular diet or? I will say that the meals in the Philippines, where we go at least, there is so many. It's really unbelievable what you're going to see if you go stay at a hotel in Makati or any 4 or 5 star resort in the islands. I can assure you that the meals are significant. There's a lot of different things to eat.
Vegetarian options, I think she's specifically referring to.
There are vegetarian meals there, but I would say that we like meat there. Let me put it, if I could be diplomatic. I mean, but I would say if you're looking for vegetarian meals, I would probably try to limit my stay most to the city areas like Makati and stay at a nice hotel because the buffets there are so large that you will definitely find vegetarian meals there. But there'll be a lot of meat around you, just to be purely honest. And I don't know if anybody's going to disagree with me on that.
Can we get a bit more of either a shout out or description of the Filipino press that not only was, thoughtful enough to kind of co-host or co-sponsor tonight, but also my understanding here from one of the responses was that they provide a lot of information. So how do we reach out to them so we get this information if we wanted to become more involved in the Filipino community here?
Christine, would you mind giving Susan de los Santos the floor for a moment?
Sure, absolutely.
Susan, yeah, floor is yours if you want to.
Okay. Thank you very much for inquiring about the Filipino community. The Filipino Press is the community newspaper that basically provides relevant information as to what's happening in the Philippines and also happening here in San Diego. We've been in business since 1991, and we try to actually gather the people together through the newspaper. Also, providing events that are that involves a different communities or different organizations. We basically collaborate. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. So we basically represent our community in all the things that we do, whether it's through the newspaper, through the events, through the networking that we do in different communities. And we actually, I would say in one word or two words, very community oriented. So any organizations that who wants to collaborate, we're pretty much open to that. Because we want to showcase what is good with our people, with our culture, with our language. So expect that if there's any initiative that would benefit our community and beyond, then we're there to support.
Great, thank you. Very interesting. Glad that you're on
Yes.
our radar now.
Yeah, and we're we actually try to be in not only in print but in person and online, and we're always looking for ways wherein we could enhance our services so we can do more for for our community. So
Right, so if we just go to what, Filipino Press, what would be the website?
it will be www.thefilipinopress.com.
Okay.
And you can actually from there you can actually access the digital version of the paper, and if you want to have a copy mailed to you, we can do that as well.
The online's great, thank you.
Yeah, we're a weekly newspaper.
Excellent, weekly, good, good
Yes.
to know, thank you.
So we probably have time for maybe one, maybe two, if it was a quick question. If anyone wants to get the last question, and we probably have time for one, maybe two.
Let me ask the the question. So for people who wants to know how safe is it to travel to the Philippines, how would you answer it, Audie?
Are you talking about in light of the pandemic?
Yeah. Mhm.
I think it's, well, it was ranked as, it was given the safety protocol by that organization. I think it's relatively safe, but I'm going to be really honest. I don't think that it's generally safe to travel, but I don't think that it's any more unsafe to travel to the Philippines than it is to go to another country like the United States. I think that it would be more safe to travel there later in the year when they have a little more of a herd immunity. I would probably wait a little bit more. And it's probably moot because you couldn't go there unless you're either a Filipino citizen or married to one, or you have some special reason that could be granted. So, but there are some issues at the very moment, like COVID has gone high a little bit, 5,000 reported cases a day.
Wow, that's a lot.
But we are now distributing COVID vaccines and have acquired and expecting to receive a lot more in the next few months.
And as a follow-up question, how could the Filipinos further help our countrymen at this time?
Well, I think that aside from sending money over there, which I think is one of the largest, the most popular ways to help the country, we get a lot of remittances. I just think in the long run, if we continue to support the country with tourism and promoting it on trade, I just believe that's the long-term solution, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, personally, that is, the short term. I think we have to build the economy there, and when I bring people there, I actually encourage people to, I wouldn't say be generous, but sometimes people go to another country, let's say a country that is financially disadvantaged, and what they do is sort of take advantage of other people by negotiating prices. And philosophically, I'm a little bit of opposed to that. Like when I go to the Philippines, I try to pay what I believe is fair when I'm purchasing things, because that's how you eradicate poverty, and that's by treating people fairly. I try to encourage that when people travel with me. Now, I don't know that everybody wants to hear that, but if they don't want to hear that, I'm not sure that helps the country. So I try to encourage people to be supportive of the country and other countries that you visit that have the same level of poverty. Is don't treat them like they're in poverty. Treat them like you would treat yourself and or others around you here in the United States. When I hired my 2 assistants in the Philippines, I literally insisted to the company. I said, I want to know how much you're going to pay them, because I cannot get involved in any company that's gonna pay low wages. I would pay the same. My staff over there get paid the same as the staff here, because I want to show respect to them, that their time is worth as much as the time over here. That's how you eradicate poverty, in my view, but that's an opinion. It's not everybody subscribes to that.
So, for the businesses, how could we help? Like, how big companies, like Nike or Adidas or the big companies, they hire, Filipinos, by giving them either business or giving them contracts. How do we, as let's say local businesses here in San Diego, can tap into the resources as far as let's say virtual employees or virtual assistants and things like that?
How do you tap into those virtual assistants?
Yeah.
Well, I can certainly connect you. I mean, I learned about them through the Filipino-American Chamber of Commerce in North County.
Oh.
They did a presentation, and I happened to be a speaker there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was impressed with their presentation. I said, and I called the owner, and I said, I'd like to hire somebody from your company. And also, Trade Commissioner Eric Elnar, who was here earlier, he has a lot of contacts with companies as well. So if anybody needs a contact, I may not necessarily know the right contact for you, but I might know somebody who could connect you. And that's the power of being a member of the government. Is, I have direct access to the embassy and all the consulate generals in Manila.
Yeah.
Audie, I'm gonna let this last question in here because I think you can answer it pretty quickly, and then I'm gonna hand it back to Christine after you answer this question to close us out. So from Bob, what fraction of the Filipino population is working overseas in various services?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a really good question. I just know there's a lot, because we have actually established what's called the Commission on Overseas Filipinos. And the head of that organization is actually a member of the cabinet. So because we have such a skilled population, the only thing I can say is I think it's a pretty large fraction of the Filipino population, but I actually don't have the number, and I'm going to find that out, because that's actually a good question.
So thanks everyone for all of those questions, and thank you, Audie, and thank you, Susan, for the questions too, and for being our media sponsor. We do appreciate everyone spending their Tuesday night here with us with the San Diego World Affairs Council. I totally appreciate everyone's time, and you especially, Audie. And now I will hand it over to our president, Christine, who will close us out.
Thank you, Dennis Michael.
So thank you, certainly, Audie, for a really interesting presentation that has turned many of us on to Philippines in a way we may not have been interested. Not to mention that probably many of us now are going to be Googling the Philippine bakeries and restaurants of the San Diego community. So hopefully there'll be a bit of a spike in at least local Philippine-American entrepreneurship. Joe, I think is still on. Joe, do you have the closeout slide with upcoming events? Yes, there he does. Thank you, Joe. So just as a reminder, Tuesday, April 2nd, we're going to have Richard Nuzio and Giles, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Dickinson Jones, speak about Myanmar, development, democracy, and despair. Both of them are long time boots on the ground experts. Richard spoke to us about a year ago, and he has a lot of people on the ground right now, as does Dickinson Jones. So they're going to be able to give us kind of, I think, a current analysis of what's unraveling right now in Myanmar. And then in May, we're going to have Anish Goel, who's going to talk about South Asia, fraught regional relationships. I believe I don't know if he's born in the US, he's of Indian ethnicity. And he started work with the State Department under my predecessor president here, John Schlosser, and says that he owes his entire career to John. So John will be handling the Q's and A's. That should be a really interesting presentation as well. And then we're partnering with World Affairs Council of Inland Southern Cal for a series, Soft Power and Foreign Policy series. This is number 2, the importance of recognizing existing power, leveraging and fostering the power of influencers to support community-led change. And that will be, I guess, in a week on the 31st. And that one, just to flag it, is from noon to 1 o'clock. Our events are 6:30 to 8, but the World Affairs Inland Southern Cal will be from noon to 1. So I guess the final closeout is join us if you haven't, bring your friends. Thank you, those of you who have been with us this evening. Again, thank you to Audie. Thank you to our sponsor. And hope to see you all soon again. Have a good evening.